Welcome to Board Game Binge, where we bring you bite-sized, bingeable board game content from across the industry. I'm your host, James Staley, and in this episode, we're welcoming back Noah Adelman, founder of Game Trays, the designers of the organizational inserts that are in many of our favorite games. Now, Game Trays Labs is creating games of their own. Their current title, Forsaken, is currently on Kickstarter. Noah, welcome to the binge. How you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing great. Now, for those who don't know you, I would encourage them to go back to episode 34, if you can believe it. That's how long ago you were on the binge. So it was almost like 2 years ago. Talked a lot about Game Trays. For people that don't necessarily go back to that episode, can you do me a favor? Can you explain to people what Game Trays is as a company and kind of what you guys do?
Sure. Yeah, so started the company in 2013, and there was a bunch of games out, just like there is now, that didn't have any storage solution or didn't have anything that was helping you like get rid of a bunch of Ziploc bags, basically. So I worked for a thermoforming company at the time, and I'm like, why not make some trays that fit perfectly a specific game that I liked playing at the time, which was Terra Mystica, which was hot back then. It still is hot. It's back to being hot. I just at Gen Con I saw the new deluxe edition, which looks pretty cool. Um, so I designed a tray that would fit all the pieces and some of the things that you could do during the game, where you would have to set up a bunch of tokens on the table, and everyone would have to like get out of their seat and find the right token whenever it was their turn to get the favor. Then you had to set up every time, and you had to get out of your seat. So I made a tray that put this all in one, and you can hand that tray to someone. It has a lid. So at the beginning of the game, you just pop the lid off, and you're ready to play. Save like 5 minutes of time every time you played the game, which at the time we played it quite a lot. So that was the start of it. And so I was doing everything in the garage, making my own molds, making my own trays, shipping them out. And eventually at Gen Con, someone noticed me, a small company called Riot Games. And they were like, we have got this little game called League of Legends. I'm like, I didn't know what that is at the time. I'm like, what is League of Legends? Right?
Yeah.
It's only the biggest video game in the world. I'm like, okay. Now, okay. So they hired me to do League of Legends, the Mechs versus Minions board game, to make the trays for that, which took another year of my work. And once that came out, then everyone wanted trays in their board games to start with. So since then, we're in close to 200 other board games from dozens of publishers, and it's been an awesome ride.
Yeah.
And now we're starting on the board game side.
Well, certainly that kind of Intel inside concept, right? Like Game Trays inside is well recognized by most people in the industry, especially gamers. Obviously, know Game Trays, and it goes beyond just having like a tray that organizes your pieces, right? Like it. I mean, when we went through in the last podcast, and you're talking about how you design some of these things, and it's not theoretical. You're often getting the actual pieces, and you guys are designing around that and making sure everything is just perfect. And then not just that tray, but then multiple trays and how they all kind of fit and organize into the box so that everything just packs up perfect, which someone like myself that's got a bit of OCD, I mean, it's a dream, right? There's nothing worse than the little Ziploc bags in your board game. Hopefully manufacturers are not doing that anymore. You still see the odd game where you're like, really, guys? Really?
I mean, I'm only one man, so I do have staff and help.
Yeah, but even throw like a thermoform tray or something in there, right? But yeah, it still shocks me when you see games that have like the little baggies. It just takes away from the experience, right? I think you're right. You want to make sure you can set up quickly, right, and get at the game, and then put it away so that you're ready to go next time you pull the game out. Nothing more frustrating than spending as much time setting the game up as you're actually playing the game itself, right?
Exactly. So it's, if you're gonna be able to get the game to the table in 5 minutes versus 15, you're gonna want to play that game more often.
Yeah.
It's just how it is. If you have a bunch of games on the shelf, the one that's going to take 5 minutes to set up so your friends don't want to leave right away, that's the one you're going to pull out. Boom, it's ready to go. Let's play.
And
so that's definitely part of it.
Yeah, and now your company has grown quite a bit even through COVID, right? Like last we talked, the team was much smaller. Can you talk a little bit about how you've grown as a company and how you guys have kind of staffed up?
Yeah, so I've had staff and employees over the last 8 years, and
Yeah.
maybe like the last 4 years, some more employees. Once we started to decide that we wanted to do a game, our own game with game trays in mind, and start Game Trays Lab, which is our publishing arm, we added a few more people as well. So more marketing. We added our in-house designer, Mike Mihalsik, and a bunch of other designers, artists, graphic artists, things like that. So people that will help us do the whole package, basically, not just game trays,
Yeah.
not just engineering, which is what the core of game trays is engineering.
And when you think of that, it's like it is about engineering, right? And people might think, oh, a tray is simple. You just throw a couple pieces in, you're snapping a lid on. Like, what's the big deal?
Yes,
It's a big deal.
it's a big deal. Yeah. It's
Like
it's
it,
it's hard.
it takes a long time, right? Like, how long is it? Like, what's your development period to create like a typical tray for a game from when they say, okay, we want game trays in our box to the moment when you actually have those files ready to go? Like, how long is
Sure.
that?
It depends a lot on the game. So a lot of these games behind me, or most of these games behind me, are ones that I've done trays for, but you can see ones that have one tray in it versus ones that have 20 different trays in it, like Eclipse Second Dawn or something like that.
Hmm.
So though that particular project was one of the longest design processes of game trays history was Eclipse Second Dawn, which has so many trays and so many intricate interworking pieces that it took a long time. So 100 plus hours of work, of actual logged time. So it could be 20, it can be 10, it could be 50, it could be 30, around there, as far as engineering hours go, of 3D modeling, mold design, getting it to the factory, working with prototypes, making sure that everything worked how we thought it was, and then getting the production files ready off to people.
Now, how do you build? Like, is it based like when you're billing? Is it based on an hour? Is it based on a project? Like, how do you guys kind of set your rates? Because when you're getting into like the thousands of hours, like that's gotta be tough to kind of quote. And sometimes I imagine when you're in these projects, you might anticipate it's going to take X amount of time, and then it
Mhm.
takes way longer, right? So, how do you guys figure out how to kind of build that?
Basically, we're, we've gotten pretty good at knowing how much time it's going to take to do a
Yeah.
specific tray or a mold. Each tray we design is considered a mold because we design the tooling for that specific tray,
Hmm.
not just here's how the tray is going to look, and then have production company figure out how to make it. We go and give them the exact tool file to go straight to tooling and straight to production,
Oh
so
wow.
they don't have to do that engineering part that sometimes can mess things up if it's not done correctly.
Hmm.
So there's two parts to that. Basically, we know how much it takes to make a tray of this size and how many different compartments and things we're going to store into it, how many custom stuff has to be in each tray. And the lid also is another tray, basically. So a lid is another mold and tool that we have to design for any specific tray system. So we're pretty good at estimating what we're going to do or what we think it's going to do. And our hours have gone down. Like,
Hmm.
something that took me 10 hours before takes me 3 hours now because it's just faster and more efficient. And so our hourly rate goes up, but our hours go way down. So it's like we can get a lot more stuff
I'm
done.
sure you've established a bit of a shorthand in some cases too, right, on how to do certain
It's
things. So that
some things,
yeah.
but it's still a lot of very custom work. It's a 80 to 90% fresh, new, custom 3D modeling and design work. So there's a few things like I can make a card that's I'm going to use the same card model in every game that has a poker card in it,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
So, but that's like 5 seconds to make a card in 3D modeling. So taking that and then making it work within the whole tray system is another story. So
Are you still getting hit with surprises, do you find?
yeah, every time, like a lot of
Yeah.
fun things, trying to expand, new thing, come up with new ideas that will help the game be even better, and work within the production world and how things are actually made, not only for how the tool is made, but how the tray is made and how it will ship, making sure that it will support everything for shipping and after you get the game and punch everything out. Um, so it's always a challenge to work with so many different production companies
Yeah.
that we've worked with so many now. So, and a lot of them more than 10 times. So people know, or production companies that we've worked with know what we expect
Yeah.
as a company. So it's definitely always getting easier. But every once in a while, they send you a sample that's perfect, and then during production, they have a batch of plastic that was a tenth of a millimeter thinner than you expected, and the
Yeah.
lid doesn't snap anymore. So it happens. It's just
And you guys are
the sad
brokering the
part.
discussions like with those end like producers of the trays. So you guys will take that role on for the manufacturer
We
or for the
definitely help.
publisher.
We definitely, interface with them because most publishers don't know the intricacies of the thermoforming process and what questions you need to ask to make sure
Yeah.
that they do it right. Not that it's not that they couldn't. It's just they don't really care, and they shouldn't care. But I know that's part of the value of game trays is we will make sure that the production company is making the tray how we want it and how everyone else likes it and how our customers want to see it and what we've become known for, I guess.
Yeah. So you've
Because even if we do a awesome design for a game, if they produce it incorrectly and it's cracking, things aren't correct and things don't fit, it looks bad on not just them but also the game trays
yeah, your name's all over it, right?
name, right?
Yeah. And then where did Game Trays Labs where did that evolve from? So this is something I was just saying just before we went on air that
Mhm.
for people who aren't like most people know what game trays are, obviously. But people who aren't necessarily following you closely may not be aware of what the extension of that company is and kind of where it came from. So can you talk a little bit about the Game Trays Labs and kind of how that formed and what that's all about?
So just being a part of so many publishers' other games, right?
Hmm.
Over close to 200 games that I've been in now, and being uh, not just clients but friends now of in the board game industry, a publisher world with so many different publishers that I've always wanted. I mean, obviously, I love games,
Hmm.
and why not do what they're doing at the same time that I'm making trays? So 2.5 years ago, uh, this I've always been asking all the publisher friends that I have and clients that I've worked with, hey, do you want to design a game under the Game Trays name and publish it? And I'll publish it, knowing everything that I know, and make it a Game Trays centric game. I've asked pretty much everyone that I've worked with. And then the first person to say yes, let's do it was Travis Chance.
Mm.
At the time he was working with Colossal Games. And then he's like, well, I'm ready to move on. Let's do this. And we started 2.5 years ago, right before COVID started, designing Forsaken. At the time, the only thing that I told him, I want this cool dice tower tray to be part of the game. Make a game around that,
Yeah.
basically. So this is what it's turned into, and it's been 2.5 years later, mostly because of COVID being, but also it's a very long, very big game, a lot of story, a lot of work, a lot of cool things that have come out of this
Sure.
project. It turned into Forsaken. That so that was basically the start of it. It was like, hey, I've done a lot of things for games. Why don't I do my own, right? And I don't know how to design games, but I know how to make trays and I know a lot about the process. So let's figure it out.
So that's cool. So Game Trays Labs is essentially an incubator for other companies' game or designers' game ideas, where you take it and say, okay, we're going to publish it for you. You design the game. we're going to make it cool as hell with the game trays designs that you guys bring to the table. I'm going to show these in a second, and they are super cool. So we're going to show those on screen. And how many do you have in the hopper? Like, do you have a number of games right now in the hopper that come out for Forsaken, or what's the plan?
So the plan is we don't know what's going to happen. So
Mm,
the plan was see how Forsaken's going to do, and obviously it's doing really well. At
yeah,
least in my mind, I think it's doing really well. It's far exceeded my expectation, and people really seem to like it. We only have like a week left on the campaign, so we expect some really cool things to happen in the last week with some of the announcements that we're going to do.
yeah,
But um, as far as things in the hopper, what we want to do is design some things internally and also take a lot of ideas that people are pitching to us that would fit in with games that game trays would really help
mm,
make not only storage, but in gameplay, uh, getting to the table faster, right? Games that might not be that popular without trays, right? And we've been in a part of a lot of those games over the years,
yeah,
just because people have come to us and said, "Hey, we got this game that takes 45 minutes to set up. Can you make it 10 minutes?" And I'd be like, "Sure, okay, whatever, I'll try." And then now it's a good game because it's 10 minutes to set up instead of 45 minutes.
yeah,
That's just one example, but also like the Reckoners where each player has their own tray and all of the different bosses have their own tray, which helps enter or change out a lot of different things that could happen in different scenarios in the game. Anything that a tray would help out with
yeah.
extraordinarily in a game is a game that we're interested in looking at.
Well, I think to say that Forsaken has been successful so far is a bit of an understatement. I mean, if I look at your page right now, I'll put this in Canadian dollars. It's the only way I can see it. $471,000 you've done so far. Still a week to go, and we all know with Kickstarter, there's always a hockey stick on the back end. So you guys are going to be in a very good spot when this thing is done. 2,296 backers, still with 9 days to go. Congrats on that. I mean,
Thank you.
that is awesome for the first published game.
Yeah.
I think that speaks volumes to what you guys bring to the table. In terms of visuals, the table presence on this game is what I would call a showpiece, right? So often when
Yeah.
you're at game night, you see different games, but there's always that game somebody pulled out and people say, "Ooh, what's that?" Right? They want to kind of
Hmm.
go over and look at it, and it's what you call like a showpiece, right? There's so much going on, and it's just basically a feast for the eyes. And this
Got some
is
table presence.
yeah, some table presence for sure, and this is no different. So, kind of at the top, can you explain what is Forsaken? So, what do you mean by this open sandbox? Can you describe kind of what the game essence is?
Sure. It's an open world sandbox, meaning you can do a lot of different things in the game. There's no specific path that you have to take in order to win the game. It's a competitive game, but you're on a deserted outer planet basically in a solar system that was uh, strip mined basically by the big industries that had the resources to get everyone out there and set up camps and strip those planets and moons for whatever they could, and then they just up and left a whole bunch of people there that were working, and they are now the Forsaken. So
Mm,
they basically don't have the means or way to get off the planet, that they're way out, on the outer skirts of the solar system. So they have to do with what they got, and now it's a wasteland of stripped out resources and things happen, right? So there's factions that brew up and gangs, and you can basically you take on a role of a person that is or alien or robot that will try to get enough fame or infamy on the planet or during their trek and during their story to make a name for themselves. And that's what you're trying to do. And everyone has their own story. So it's a very story-driven game at the same time of being an open world game. So every character you can be has their own story path. And there's branching stories for each character that every time you play that character, it'll be different. And not only that, the other players that you're playing with, the other characters, and also what interactions you have on the planet will change the game during the game only. It's not a permanent, there's no permanent changes to the game. It's not a legacy or a
Mm.
campaign type game, but you will see very drastically different games every time you play um, because of the encounters that you come across on the planet and what choices you make for those encounters, let alone your own character story. So it's a lot of cool things. Uh, you can do a lot of different things. Basically, that's the open world
Yeah.
sandbox type explanation, but it's
And,
really cool. I mean, it's awesome.
and then you're looking at about 60 minutes per player play time. I'm showing the player board on screen here. I mean, it is super cool.
Yeah,
So
the playboard. Yeah,
yeah, so you had this, and I'll try to use some words to kind of describe it to people that are listening. But you've got the plastic board, and then the artwork is modular. So depending on the character you pick, you're kind of plugging it into the board, and all of a sudden the board goes from being basically just looking like a single color plastic to this really rich, multi-leveled, multi-compartment kind of player experience in front of you, where different things are
hmm
plugging in different spaces, and you've got counters and so forth, which
yeah,
just looks. I
it's
mean,
sweet.
it looks sweet. Yeah, I mean that's the only way to say it. It looks awesome. And then when you go one step further, and then you've got these kind of world boards. So can you explain the world board? So you're playing with your player board, but then are you actually moving characters in this kind of
Yes.
world board? How does that work?
So that is the board, the world. There's the main planet Theria,
Yeah.
and then there are two moons. So
Oh, the
you
moons.
can
Okay, gotcha.
walk around the planet and shuttle around to the moons that have their own uniqueness to them and events that are you know, isolated on the moons.
Hmm.
But the cool thing is if you come across something on one of the moons, an event that happens that you make a choice, it could affect things on other planets or on the main planet or the other moons or the planet, the moon that itself. So depending on what happens if you fight someone or if you try to fight someone and you don't defeat it, then he might run off to the other moon and then
Mm.
someone may encounter that guy, but that only happens if you come across that one encounter uh, on that moon in that play session, right?
Yeah.
So, and then you may not see him again, or you may see him again, or someone else may see that same guy on another planet, but you wouldn't unless you first encountered him and didn't defeat him. If you did defeat him, you might get a weapon or something like that. Uh, a lot of cool things that we've been able to do with that kind of story-driven, but one play, you know, aspect of the game. Every game starts the same, except for the characters that you choose.
Yeah.
So
And it just branches off in infinite number of
always
different ways, right?
exactly.
And then this dice tray, I got to talk about this. So again, I'm showing it on screen here. Can you walk us through? So you've created this dice tray, which
Mhm.
I don't know if this is a new design or if this just I haven't seen it, but where you have these kind of cascading levels, and
Yes.
depending on where the die stops,
hmm
that then kind of impacts the value, I guess, of it. Is that something you
Yes.
guys came up with, or is that like is this is new for
Yeah.
me? But yeah.
Yeah, it's new. I mean, there's a few games that this the zone that
Mm-hmm.
dice will
Land
spill out
into, yep.
of, right, will have different cavities or zones, but this is the first time I've seen it, at least, where there's actual tiered,
Yeah.
uh, where they'll tumble down. You can also, I don't know if you guys can see my video feed also at the same time, but I've got the tray here, the actual tray, and I could show you how it works. But basically, you are dumping them in, and then based on the tiers plus the value of the die. So the
Yeah.
die have basically critical hits. So that will double the tier that it's on. So each tier has a value for power and damage. And you're always doing not always, but sometimes, most of the time, you're doing a one versus one battle
Mm-hmm.
or test. So one person takes one color dice, one person takes another color dice, and their dice pool is built off of their gear and different cards that they play. So uh, once you figure out the power, you dump them in, and then based on the result of the tiers
Yeah.
and the dice, that's figures out who wins. And there's a lot of cool gear cards that let you re-roll other people's dice or your own dice. So if someone got down to the really awesome high-powered tier and you've got a card, you could pick out that awesomely rolled dice and have them re-roll that in the tower, which probably will make it not go down as far, which is the further it goes down the tier, the more powerful it is in general. So a
Yeah,
lot of cool things
it,
that we
it,
can
it
do.
is so
Mhm.
cool.
Yeah,
Uh,
I mean, you can also move dice up a tier or down a tier. A lot of different ways we can manipulate the dice after the roll, which is cool.
yeah. And then, I mean, and I was saying this before we went on here too. Like this Kickstarter page goes on literally forever. Like it's got to be one of the longest
It's
Kickstarter
getting
pages ever.
longer. It's getting
There's
longer. It's
so
getting
much
longer.
on here, but it's worth the scroll, man. Because like, you start getting into like the minis and these player tokens, and then the currency markers and all these kind of things. It just goes on and on and on. And then if you want to watch playthroughs, there's different people showing playthroughs. You guys must have been like obviously 2 years. You've been 2.5 years. You've been working on kind of publishing your own game,
Mhm.
but the amount of content that's in this game, like
Yes.
the game itself, must have started before 2 years ago. Is that the case, or is this whole thing came together in 2 years?
All fresh,
All the
all
writing and
new,
everything.
everything.
That's
Yeah.
insane.
The whole world building, everything
Yeah.
started with, hey, I want to do a cool dice tower with tiers. That was the start. That's basically it. And then this happened, right? So it definitely was all new. It's all new. It's all new.
That is crazy.
All the stories, and we've got like 120,000 words of content.
Yeah.
And one of the tiers on our campaign is a foreteller tier, which is another company similar to Game Trays, not dissimilar to Game Trays, where
Yeah.
they add on to a lot of good games. Like I add on, like Game Trays adds on to a lot of good games.
Yep.
They add on voice acting work. So they're going to read basically every word that we wrote, not only on the cards, but in the book that you look up results from. And it'll be professionally voice acted from Hollywood stars, and you'll be able to use an app and basically read the card and it will then choose what you actually chose, and then it will read the result instead of you having to page through it and read it aloud. If you like to do that, you obviously can do that still. But
Yeah, and when if people check out the page, you can see that there's you can actually hit play and you can get like kind of a
there's a
preview.
demo.
Yeah, I was listening to that. It's really well done. Really well done.
Yeah.
So how has the shipping impacted you guys? So you've been working on this the past two and a
Not
half
yet.
years. Well, it hasn't yet, but I'm sure in your
Not yet.
forecasting, you've had to kind
Yes.
of plan for this, right? So when you have a game like this, which has got a lot of stuff in it, there's a lot of weight. What kind of mitigation plans did you guys put in place just to kind of cover that off and make sure you weren't going to get caught?
We yeah. So luckily, we're not shipping till uh, closer to the end of next year.
Yeah,
Um, so hopefully we'll be back. We already are seeing a lot of drops
yeah, a lot
in
of relief and
container
stuff.
cost, which is nice. But we wanted to give the backers the lowest price possible for shipping, basically our cost or lower. But we tried to we what we did was we made a promise that we won't charge anything more than what we're getting charged, but also up to a certain percentage. So if I actually don't remember the actual percentage. I think it's like 20-25%. You will never pay more than that above the shipping rates that we're charging you during
Hmm.
the campaign. So, and we will never ask for more money. Basically, that hey, we can't fulfill this order. We can't. It's so expensive. We didn't do a good job. We need more money. We promised in our shipping terms and service that we will not ever ask for more money once you've fulfilled or finished your pledge manager.
Hmm.
And we also said that you will never be um, charged more than 20 or 25% above what we estimated the shipping would be
Yeah,
at this point, because we don't know what the shipping is going to be a year from now, right?
yeah.
So
Hopefully it's lower. I think we're all crossing our fingers, right? I
exactly,
mean,
and
hopefully it can't
that's
get
our hope.
worse. Hopefully
Yeah,
it can't get worse.
it can definitely get worse, but we won't like double it. That's basically our promise on
Yeah.
the campaign. That was what we tried. That was what we came up with. That's something that would ease mine. And if you look at our shipping rates, they're very,
Yeah,
very
they
reasonable.
seem quite reasonable. One of the
It's
things
such a
that,
big game. I mean, look at this box. It's huge, right?
yeah, it's
But
massive.
the box will get smaller, just like I normally do for most games
Yeah,
that I work on. It always is at the last minute where I
get some
compact and
efficiencies and
Tetris thing, and exactly.
yeah. Yeah, I'm showing on the screen here the actual pledges. What I found interesting is the most pledges is on your top level. Like, give me everything, right?
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
congrats on that. I mean, that speaks to the fact that people are, when they're in, they're all in, right? They don't want to
Yes.
kind of dabble. They want the full experience, which is super awesome. And then a number of people that have actually jumped in saying, "Give me access to the pledge manager." That's a huge number of people that are saying they want access to the pledge manager. And what I'm trying to figure out in my mind is this people that are kind of waiting to see what else you're going to release because you guys keep doing announcement day after day after day. There's something
Hmm.
else that
Hmm.
you're announcing, or kind of what's generating that. I'm not really sure, but I mean, if a quarter
Yeah,
of them actually convert into backers, I mean, this is a
sure.
massive campaign. Like, I mean, it's already massive, but then it's like crazy massive, right?
Exactly. And there's a lot of theories about that. A lot of them are waiting to the last few days to
Yeah,
decide, or they're, if they don't pledge during the campaign and then during the pledge manager, they're going to be able to purchase the game still. It's not going to be the exact same deal that they get during the campaign,
yeah,
but they'll at least have that chance if they decide that or can uh, purchase the game at that point. So there's a lot of different reasons why people do the dollar pledge,
yeah,
and we'll know more at the end, right? To see how many of those people decided that we've given them enough
yeah.
value that they want to back. And there's a lot of other cool things that we're going to have in the pledge manager that won't even be in the campaign. A lot of game trays products like the
Oh,
X
okay, yeah, yeah.
trays, things that a lot of people see in pledge managers, but we've got a lot of products that people like, that people are going to get good deals on, um, during the pledge manager just for being a backer of Forsaken.
That's a good point too, right? Like, I imagine
Hmm.
there's a number of people that are saying, you know what, maybe Forsaken's not right for me, but I know that I'm gonna get a crazy deal on some amazing add-ons that I can use in my other games. So I want to be in that pledge manager to just get access to that.
Exactly. And we've got a lot of cool trays. So these are X trays, so
Yep.
these are Y trays. These are the new version, which is like the slightly bigger version of the game trays, the X trays, so the smaller ones.
Mm-hmm.
So they're twice as wide, and we there will be getting some of those in their copy of Forsaken because we're going to use them as part of the storage solution. But that will be something new that people could buy during the campaign.
Yeah.
Pledge Manager. It's cool.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, no, I want to congratulate you on your success with this. This is amazing. Certainly, it's a testament to the quality of work that you guys have put out there in the industry. You're well beloved by most in the industry, I would say. Just the number of games you guys have touched and enhanced, quite frankly, and made our lives better, not having to burn a bunch of time reorganizing things. So I want to thank you for that, and I want to wish you all the best this coming year. I can't wait to see where this campaign finishes off.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me.
No worries. You take care. Cheers.
All right.
This has been an episode of the Board Game Binge podcast, hosted by James Staley, produced by James Staley and Mike Bruner, with original music by Nick Smith. If you would like to watch these interviews live, simply subscribe to our YouTube channel, Board Game Binge, and you'll get access to live interviews, giveaways, and interesting board game content from across the industry. I can't wait for you to join us. See you next time.